In the world of automatic switchblades, American knife makers reign supreme. Two of the most popular standouts are also the two who have been doing it the longest. I am, of course, talking about Protech and Microtech. Microtech was founded by Tony Marfione out of his apartment in Florida back in 1994, and Protech was founded by Dave Wattenberg in California in 1998. Both of these companies have a very storied history and a lot of extremely successful models. And even though there are some small-time custom makers and small-time production makers who have made knives that are arguably better, as a whole, their body of work really speaks to a level of excellence and creating a gold standard when it comes to automatic switchblades. But now the question must be asked, who has done it best? Who has done it better? Is it Protech with their very, very specialized out-the-side automatics, or is it Microtech, a company known probably most for their out-the-front knives, but in fact started with an out-the-side automatic? Today, we aim to delve into this question to see if once and for all we can put the matter to bed. Who did it best? Was it Protech? Was it Microtech? And to help us determine this, we have two knives in front of us today. We have the Microtech LUDT Gen 3, and we also have the Knifejoy exclusive Protech Strider PT Plus. Now, both of these knives are excellent in their own rights. We're going to do a head-to-head comparison to see if we can answer this age-old question of who did it better. Before we get started, I do want to go ahead and say that neither of these knives were provided to me for review. I did purchase both of these with my own money. So if you appreciate raw, unfiltered, uncut, opinion-based knife content, please hit the like button, and if you haven't done so yet already, make sure to subscribe. Let's begin with the rundown on the Microtech LUDT Gen 3. Now, this is a knife that many would actually say started it all for Microtech, despite the fact that they are probably most well known for their out-the-front knives like the award-winning Ultratech and the ever-legendary Microtech Halo. The LUDT was one of, in fact, the first models that they came out with, or in this case, the UDT. This is where we are at. Now, they've made some very impressive updates to this knife here in 2024, one of which being a aesthetic update. We have a fuller. The last Gen 2 version did not have that, and also now these are in fact running on bearings. The action is very snappy and it comes out the box ready to go. It does have enough billboarding, so if you do find yourself in a self-defense situation, whoever your opponent is will in fact know that they were stabbed by a Microtech. They'll know the birth date of that Microtech as well as the serial number. Now, these do typically come in a black finish with this black 3M grip tape. However, you can also get them in different aluminum anodization options. This one is the tan option, and it came from NC Blade. For hardware, we're looking at a T20 pivot, which is absolutely massive. Also, another departure from the last generation of LUDTs is this one is not a clamshell design. It is in fact following modern standards with a full-length backspacer instead of going with that clamshell. We also have a clip which is not deep carry, but it is bent, and it does have these rivets in them to help make sure that the pocket clip stays very well ingrained in your pocket. It's not going anywhere. This is an overbuilt design, and we're looking at an overall length of 8 inches with a 3.5-inch blade and a 4.5-inch handle. We have a very generous sharpening choil here, which gives you plenty of distance between the plunge grind and the edge termination of the blade, meaning that when you go to sharpen this eventually, you won't have any issues with a smile. It doesn't weigh that much either, coming in at 3.6 ounces. It indexes rather well. Overall, this knife is very well balanced, and for a third generation, you can tell that Microtech brought their A game with the new LUDT Gen 3. As far as the materials are concerned, we have aluminum body with this 3M grip tape and what Microtech is calling their M390MK, which is a specially formulated M390 from Bowler, made specifically for Microtech. Its blade steel properties don't really vary that much from the original M390. However, it does allow it to have excellent cutting performance, and it's supposed to polish a little bit better. With all of these things considered, the Microtech LUDT Gen 3 comes in at a price tag of around $260. Weighing in for Protech, we have the Protek PT Strider, and this one is the Knifejoy exclusive. One of the great things about Protech is that you can get their knives in a ton of different variations with a ton of different materials, and you can also get them pretty much blinged out. This version has a 154 cm blade, which has been hand ground and mirror polished by knife making legend Mike Irie out of Colorado Springs. It features a black pearl trigger button and these green aluminum handle scales with the Grinch face etched in. This was a knife that was released at the end of 2023 in December, and it's one that is very, very easy on the eyes. Action on the PT Strider is very, very snappy, and it's no wonder that people say that Protech has some of the best, if not the best, out-the-side automatic action that money can buy. Now, the PT Strider is a bit shorter than the Microtech LUDT, coming in at 7 inches overall with a 3-inch blade and a 4-inch handle. However, we see a beautiful design preference here that comes from their partnership with Strider, as we have both a finger choil and a sharpening choil. And much like with the Microtech, that sharpening choil does an adequate job of keeping the plunge grind away from the edge termination, meaning that, again, when you go to sharpen this blade, you're not going to have any issues with a smile. While it doesn't have as much billboarding as the Microtech LUDT Gen 3, it does in fact have an issue with collecting fingerprints, and you'll find that if you touch this blade, it will in fact collect more fingerprints than your favorite episode of Law and Order. With that being said, we have the Strider logo on one side and the Protech logo on the other, and it says Protech USA, just in case you forgot where your money went. The Protek Strider PT comes in at a whopping $390 for this exact version on Knifejoy at the moment. However, you can get them as low as $260, or if you want one that is super custom and pimped out, they do come at higher price ranges as well, sometimes ranging in the $800 to $1,000 price range. Now that we have a basic rundown on each of these really awesome automatic out-the-side switchblades, let's go ahead and compare them head to head to see if we can figure out who did it best. Was it Microtech? Was it Protech? Let's start off with the first comparison point, which I want to talk about being cost to value ratio. Now, ironically, both of these models start around the $260 price range. Again, not for this one specifically. However, both of them at the $260 price range come in with pretty much the same kind of value to material composition. For example, we have aluminum and M390MK, and on the $260 version of the Strider PT Plus, you have aluminum and in most cases MagnaCut. If you want something with more of a custom grind like this version, you do end up paying more for it, but you also get more bling for your money. The next comparison point is going to be lockup and lockout. Now, I have to say that the Microtech LUDT Gen 3 is very, very well locked up. It's locked up and locked out like a bank vault. There's absolutely no blade play up, down, left or right, left or center. It's all locked out. On the Protek Strider PT, we don't actually have any issue with the lockup either, but I would say that if I had to pick one for lockup and lockout, I would probably go with the Microtech. Moving on to what many of you actually care about, we're going to talk about the factory edge. And the irony here when we talk about the factory edges is that both of these come with a hand ground blade. That means that they were actually sharpened by a person and not by a computerized machine. This was done by hand by someone at Microtech, and this one was done by legendary knife maker Mike Irie. So the edge on this knife is very good. I would say that it's probably even sharp enough to shave with. That being said, Microtech has come out with some really good edges on their recent iterations. Let's go ahead and test out the Microtech LUDT Gen 3. Without a shadow of a doubt, Microtech takes the cake on this one and the edge bevel competition. Again, Microtech's been absolutely killing it. Then again, it could also come down to the fact that the edge and blade geometry is much thinner behind the edge on this Microtech than it is, in fact, on the Strider. It goes without saying that you could probably get a better edge on both of these knives if you were to do the sharpening yourself. But again, we're testing what they're like the moment you get them out of the box. Neither of these knives have been cut with since before this testing. And the last, probably most fun comparison point between these two is going to come down to the action. Protech has been known for having the best out-the-side automatic action in the game for a long time. And unless you do a head-to-head comparison like this, you might not actually be able to tell the difference. With that being said, I absolutely can, since I've been opening and closing these the entire time. Neither of these actions are weak, and I will say this, the Microtech has a longer, heavier blade, and so it does also have a slower deployment, even though it's very snappy. It's also not necessarily a knife that I would hand to someone not used to knives, because if they don't grip it correctly, this is 100% a knife that would fly out of their hands, and that's just a bad day overall. With that being said, Protech takes the edge on this one. The power and the force in which this blade deploys is purely impressive. The combination of smooth action and power at the same time lends to Protech's legacy just how good their action is. It's no wonder that they go ahead and inlay things like black pearl on the buttons to really highlight the fact that the action is where it's at on these Protechs. In conclusion, I have to say that both of these automatic out-the-side switchblades are fantastic. I actually love each of them equally for many of the same reasons, but also for some very different reasons as well. You can tell that both of these knife makers have a wealth of experience which translates to the design and the function of the knife. With Microtech, it's very function forward, very user friendly, and honestly, for a USA-made blade with premium knife steel that has gone through 3 iterations now, it can't really get much better for a user knife than the LUDT Gen 3. Or if you're looking for purely the action and also the cachet of saying that you have a knife which is both mirror polished and hand ground by a knife making legend, and oh yeah, you also seem to appreciate things like black pearl trigger buttons and the Grinch logo on the back, the Protech Strider PT is fantastic. Both of these knives have excellent ergonomics, they perform well in the field, and I don't think that anybody would be shy to own either one of these, but they're not necessarily cheap, and that's why we do tests like this, to help people understand what they're spending their money on and if it's worth their hard-earned dollars. Here in 2024, the price of knives has gone up exponentially, but now it's time to talk about your opinion, because value is one of those things that's very transient. It depends on the person who's spending the money. Let me know in the comment section down below what your thoughts are. If you had to pick between these two knives, would you go for the Protech Strider PT, or would you take up arms with the Microtech LUDT Gen 3? Your opinion means a lot. And by the way, guys, if you want to see individualized reviews for each of these knives, I will be doing that at a later time. So if you want to be notified when that happens, make sure to smash that subscribe button. But in the meantime, let's have a conversation in the comment section down below. And if you want to watch more awesome knife and EDC content, make sure to click on one of the videos that pops up next.